Planet Dolan.
Over 500,000 people go missing each year in the United States alone, although most of those are by choice. But what about the people who vanished into thin air? What sinister fates have missing people suffered? Here are the people who have mysteriously disappeared.
My name is Nixium, and today, I'll be your narrator.
Number 15. Percy Fawcett was a British officer and explorer who went on an expedition to the Amazon, accompanied by his 22-year-old son and the son's friend. Fawcett had funding to find a mythical lost city he named Z, believed to be the remains of an ancient civilization. But after a month of regular letters, nothing was heard from the group. One theory goes that Fawcett actually intended to disappear and start a cult of the jungle goddess. Number 14. Workers at a law office in Ohio arrived to work one day in 1981 to find everything prepared and tidied by the secretary, Cynthia Anderson. As usual, the mail was sorted, the radio was on, but there was no sign of Miss Anderson. Her purse and keys were gone, but her car remained parked outside. On her desk was a book that she had been reading, and it was opened to a page where the heroine of the novel gets abducted at knife point. Number 13. 9-year-old Aisha Dugrai shared a bedroom with her younger brother in their house in North Carolina, but one morning in 2000, her parents found Aisha's bed empty. When a police search began, 2 drivers nearby reported seeing a girl walking by the side of a highway in the rain. One said she ran into the woods when he slowed his car. Later on, her bag was found several miles from her home, but there have been no further leads since. Number 12. While flying in a Cessna light aircraft, trainee pilot Frederick Valentich lost contact with Australian air traffic control. Radio transmission sent from the 20-year-old's flight said his plane was being approached by an aircraft which began to move around him. He reported engine trouble before he was asked to identify the object, to which his final response was, "It isn't an aircraft." However, it should be said that Valentich was known to be a UFO enthusiast. Number 11. The Dalai Lama is the spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhism, loved and respected worldwide. For 500 years, each Dalai Lama is chosen as a reincarnation of the previous, and the person who does the choosing is called the Panchen Lama. In 1995, the newly appointed Panchen Lama disappeared 3 days after he was chosen for the role. In his place, China appointed its own Panchen Lama, never telling the people of Tibet what happened to the original. Number 10. UCLA student Michael Negrete was up all night playing a computer game online at his college dorm near Sunset Boulevard. He logged off at 4 a.m. in the morning, and when his roommate woke up at 9 a.m., Michael had vanished. Not only did he leave behind most of his possessions, including his wallet, but some reports suggest he even left shoes behind. Detectives are still baffled as to where he could have gone to. Number 9. 18th century estate owner Mr. Howe lived in central London with his wife. One day, Mr. Howe left the house telling his wife that he had business to conduct at the tower. Later that day, he sent her a note telling her he had to urgently go to Holland for a few weeks. She saw him again 17 years later. He had been living 1 block away the entire time, and when reunited with his wife, lived happily ever after with her, explaining nothing. Number 8. Frenchman Louis Leprons went down in history for shooting the first ever motion picture, but equally remarkable is his disappearance in 1890, shortly before he was due to showcase his camera in America. Prons boarded a train in Dijon, waving goodbye to his brother, but when the train arrived in Paris, Prons was not on board. His body and luggage were never found. Some suspect foul play from rival movie camera inventor Thomas Edison. Number 7. One evening in 2000, 18-year-old Zeb Quinn had finished his shift at Walmart. He had plans with his coworker, but he suddenly received a message on his pager and he drove off in his car. 4 days later, Quinn's car was found opposite his mother's workplace with lipstick drawn over it and a live puppy inside. Strangely, the co-worker was sentenced for the unrelated murder of the two people in 2017, making him the prime suspect. The puppy was adopted by a detective. Number 6. Agatha Christie, who is the best-selling novelist of all time, has intrigued readers for a century with her murder mysteries. But in 1926, Christie became the subject of intrigue herself when she disappeared. After an argument with her husband, her car was found on a cliff top. All of England, including the author of Sherlock Holmes, began a huge search. But in the end, Christie turned up 10 days later at a hotel with no memory of what had happened. Number 5. The Vatican City is a country with only 800 people. 15-year-old Emanuela Orlandi was one of those people in 1983, having a father who worked at the Vatican Bank. Now, on June 22nd, she told her sisters and friends at school in Rome that she had a job offer from the Avon Cosmetics company. But after class that day, she was never seen again. Numerous theories abound, from Turkish terrorists to twisted Vatican sex parties. Number 4. In 1974, nanny and housekeeper Sandra Rivet was found bludgeoned to death by a lead pipe in the house of her employer, Richard Bingham, an aristocrat known as Lord Lucan. That night, Lucan fled London and headed for the coast. His abandoned car was eventually found on the south coast of England. Many assumed the famed gentleman had thrown himself from the White Cliffs, but since that day, people worldwide have reported seeing the disgraced Earl from Colombia to India. Number 3. Jean Spangler was trying to make it as a movie star in 1940s Hollywood, but in 1949, she disappeared while driving across town to collect child support from her ex-husband and then to act in a night shoot for a movie that may not have existed. The only evidence found was her purse, which contained a note addressed to somebody named Kirk. Media speculation was so heated that star actor Kirk Douglas had to publicly state that he was not involved. Number 2. On a summer's day in 1912, the Dunbar family lost sight of their son Bobby while on a fishing trip in Louisiana. After an 8-month search, police found a child matching the description with a man who called the child Bruce and said he was the son of Julia Anderson, a different woman though. Newspaper reports suggest that the child in question failed to recognize Julia when presented to her, but also failed to recognize the original Dunbar family. To this day, it is unknown whose child that boy was. And number 1. If you're the leader of a country, you would assume that there's always someone who knows where you are and what you're doing. In 1967, Australian Prime Minister Harold Holt was out for a swim with friends when he disappeared from sight. Holt was supposedly a strong swimmer, but the beach may have had riptides, sharks, or deadly jellyfish. His body was never recovered, but it's probably pretty safe to say that he drowned because of, well, all the water.
This video was made possible by our fans over on Patreon. Thanks for your support, guys.
And that's it, everyone. See ya.